Good evening, everybody. Very
Good
sorry
evening,
about
ma'am.
a late late start, and welcome to today's episode of Marvelous Medicine, which is a Beyond Medicine series that we do on the last Thursday of every month. And I'm extremely happy to have Dr. Ranju Singh, with whom Dr. Patta Radhakrishna will be talking. And the whole theme is doing things other than our day job. So over to you, Radhakrishna.
It's a pleasure, and as you see, the Ranjo's screen is complete and so attractive and actually, I think you look better than in any of the pictures I've seen. It's a pleasure talking to you, ma'am, and to just set the ball rolling because we often seen that the audience will increase by about 8:10, 8:15,
Right, sir.
and also this goes live and this also gets recorded. So now to start with, Ranju, I'd like to know a little bit about your background. Where do you belong to? Where did you have your schooling, or your medical education, etc.?
Sir, I basically belong to Punjab, but I've done all my schooling and everything related to medicine in Delhi. I shifted to Delhi. My father was in a transferable job. So I shifted to Delhi when I was 7 years old and have not left the city since then. So I did all my schooling from Delhi. I'm a DPS product, Delhi Public School. And then I got admission in Maulana Azad Medical College. I never really wanted to be a doctor. So, in fact, I always wanted to be a lawyer. But my father was very persuasive and he kept insisting that, why don't you go ahead and give your medicine entrance? You may or may not get in. In case you get in, you will take a call when the time comes. Don't do it if you don't want. They blackmailed me into giving my medicine entrance. I was always a brilliant student. So I cracked the entrance exam and lo and behold, I got admission into Maulana Azad. And by the time MAMC results came, since I was really not interested in medicine, I had enrolled in SRCC. That's Sri Ram College of Commerce. So, I don't know, had I been there where I would have been today, but I had given my certificates, I'd, taken admission and kind of bought my books and seriously wanted to pursue economic honors. But then, of course, life had a different path laid out. I got into medicine, and then my father said that now that you've got in, I think you should take it. And people would actually look at me, and I got bullied by peer pressure, to be very honest. People would look at me, they'll roll their eyes and say, my God, medicine in MBBS and in MAMC, and you're not going. And I got bullied into leaving SRCC and joining MAMC, but I've never regretted the decision. So medicine happened by chance, but it was life-changing. So I did undergraduation from Maulana Azad Medical College. Thereafter, in my first attempt, I went to UCMS, that's University College of Medical Sciences, for doing anesthesia. And by the time I decided to do this, I was already dating my would-be husband, who had decided that he wanted to be a surgeon. And I think I was introduced to anesthesia by him. He kept insisting it was a wonderful branch. Why don't you think about it? Because my parents were both non-medicals. So for them, gynae-obs and pediatrics was probably the only two branches which women kind of should opt for. They weren't very conversant with anesthesia. So it was my husband who persuaded me, my boyfriend at that time, who persuaded me to think about anesthesia. And it's been such a wonderful decision. I did anesthesia from UCMS. And then I became a faculty at UCMS. I've had a very fulfilling career since then. I worked at various institutes. I also went to Nepal. There's a wonderful medical college there called BP Koirala Institute of Health Sciences. It was actually funded and created by the government of India under what is known as the Indo-Nepal Friendship Treaty. So at that time, the Indian government had pledged both faculty as well as a lot of other support for that college till it took off on its own. And I was an assistant professor there. Thereafter, I came back to Delhi. I went back to UCMS as a lecturer. And then I got selected for UPSC, and here I am in Harding for the past 22 years now.
But it's always pleasurable to be back as a HOD in the college where you studied. But if you go back a little bit, what attracted you to the surgeon you're talking about? Is surgery or
Yes,
something
yes,
more than that?
yes. He was a general surgeon once upon a time. Now he's doing exclusively transplants. Dr. Vidya knows him. He was in Chennai, Fortis for a very long time, and now is back in Delhi. He's now only a transplant surgeon, does only liver transplants. But he was the exact antithesis of what I was, Dr. Pata. I was gregarious.
Is it
And
that it attracted you to him?
yeah, probably because I was extremely talkative and very vivacious, and I was gregarious, and I always wanted to, and he was the quiet, sedate, the factor. So I think initial attraction was because of completely opposite personalities. He was very, very quiet, very introvert, very shy. So I think that's what brought us together. We were both students in Maulana Azad Medical College when we had met, and we dated for almost 4 years before we got married.
Now, if I had to ask you, if born again, will you still be in anesthetists and will you fall in love with the surgeon? The same
About the
surgeon.
second part, I don't know. Why can't I have more options to explore? But but yes, anesthesia, definitely. I'm a very, very proud anesthesiologist. I just love anesthesia. I love being a teacher. I love doing anesthesia, and I would do it over and over and over again. This credit I will not give to Puneet. That's my husband's name. I always think women should get more choice if allowed. Anybody should get more choice. Why be tied down to the same person over and over again?
Yeah, that sounds interesting. But then, from what I hear about you and what I read about you, that you're a very, very popular person. What is that popularity with your? So what makes your students get attracted to you? How are you a special teacher as compared to anybody else?
I think um, uh, I think I generate a lot of confidence in the students. When you love your subject, it shows. Your happiness, which stems from your confidence in yourself, shows. So you are a happy person. You're a confident person. They know that she knows her subject, and that sense of, I think, that sense of friendliness, that inspires students to to continue learning. When you have a very stern, intimidating teacher, the students, I don't think, bond very well. So the ability to make them feel relaxed, the ability that yes, it's all right to ask questions, it's all right to feel foolish, and to actually get down to their level, connect with them, actually helps you make a bond. I think that is, and your communication skills, I think they play a very, very large role in your being able to connect to students. See, when you know that they will be interested in certain things in their life, you have to go down to their level. uh, Staying with youngsters keeps you young, and when you continue to interact with youngsters, you learn to talk their language. You know they'll be on Insta, they'll be on WhatsApp, what makes them tick. If you get down to that level with them, they'll automatically connect with you. So I think I inspire that confidence in students, and they see a happy face and they feel happy, I think. Nobody
My
likes a stern, grouchy teacher, is what.
Certainly. My guru, Dr. Giriraj Sharma, he's got a corner for students who are not up to the mark. He focuses on them and he thinks that they require more attention. What is your view on that?
Yes, I think they are the ones. See, the good students would anyway do well. They are the ones who will be there in class. They'll be the ones who'll be answering. They are the ones who'll be doing well. It's these slow risers, late comers, these the slow filling alveoli, which actually need your attention. You need to take them into your wing. They are the ones who actually are there to prove that yes, you can make a difference. So they need special care, and when they do well, it's very fulfilling. When you have students who've come up, and it's not only about anesthesia, it's about everything else in life. We recently did, I'm quite active in extracurricular activities. So we recently did a fashion show, right? So, which included ramp walking and, dressing up and posing and stuff like that. A lot of sophisticated ramp walking was involved. And we enrolled first year postgraduates, shy young boys who had never seen a stage, who'd never danced, who had never moved a step. Some people have 2 left feet. That guy probably had 4 left feet, if that's possible. But, I encourage them that it's all right. You're not going to prove a point to anybody over there. It's just for yourself. So just let loose. And after the event was over, he came, he actually had tears in his eyes. He touched my feet and said, "Ma'am, I never thought I could do it." Just that 5 minutes of ramp walk completely transformed that person who used to stutter, who used to, be afraid to talk to people, who would be so shy of facing people. And I think that little 5 minutes on the ramp transformed his life. So I think sir is very right when he says that these are the people who make it worth your while, that yes, you can make a difference.
Great. Now, I'm sure you'll be a tough boss to your colleagues. What makes your colleagues like you or follow you or listen to you?
See, there are 2 different things. Tough is good. And it starts from the top. See, you are tough because you are working hard and they see that. So when you expect them to work hard, it's not like asking for the moon because you are putting in that much of effort yourself. And everything about work is related to how much they respect you. You cannot force them into subjugation. You cannot be strict and say, follow me, believe me, respect me. It comes from within. They have to look at you and think that, yes, if she says that I have to do this, I must do it because they respect me. And that respect comes essentially from 2 things. One, you should be hardworking yourself. And secondly, you should be good at what you do. My respect doesn't come from the way I dress or the way for anything else, or from where I come from or what car I'm driving. It comes from the fact that I really know my work. I am good at what I do. They respect me for that. And secondly, if I expect them to do some hard work, I'm doing it myself. So that is probably what actually drives people to you. It brings them together. It encourages bonding. It encourages a confidence, I should say, in oneself. So unless you are willing to put in that hard work yourself, you should not expect it from anybody else. And when they see it, they will definitely come along. So it's always a teamwork. And I think one thing which I've learned in my life, Dr. Pata, is appreciation. Go ahead and appreciate your colleagues. It's all right. Tell her she's wearing a pretty sari. Tell her she's wearing a nice necklace. Tell her that she's looking good or he's doing good or, his shirt is nice or today he spoke very well or some little a feeling of appreciation. It really, really helps. Everybody wants that love and respect. I mean, you kick a dog, he'll bite you, yeah. The only thing he also wants from you is a little bit of love and respect. So human beings also want that love and respect from you. So show that appreciation. It doesn't take anything away from you if you say that, thank you so much and be nice and be kind. That is what brings people together.
Very, very well said. Actually, it sounds like
नमस्कार, कैसे हैं?
Giriraj
I
Sharma.
just want to bring it on record that none of today's interview was completely spontaneous and impromptu, and no questions have been exchanged like I was trying to tell Dr. Pata. But
चलते वक्त फोन किया था.
Sorry, ma'am, can you just unmute by accidentally?
Yeah, I think I accidentally unmuted. I said I just want to bring on record that today's interview is completely impromptu and it's spontaneous.
It's very, very spontaneous. Now, I'll come to a slightly more delicate question. Yes. I mean, do all your surgeons like you? And if so, why?
How should I answer that? I think they do. If I put
you
down
like
my
them
foot,
too.
If I put down my foot for something, it's always the reason. Yeah. It's not because you don't want to work, and over a period of time when they work with you, they understand that if there is some reason, she's put her foot down or she's saying no, it'll probably for some very, very good reason. You build that reputation for yourself, and your knowledge talks. The way you handle your cases, the way you handle yourself, the way you handle the colleagues, the departments, the students. It's a very small world. Word gets around. So they know that, see, no surgeon will be happy with an anesthesiologist at the end, because they will try to bully you, and if you get bullied, you're very good. If you don't get bullied, then it leaves a little margin for them to be unhappy. But that's okay. Majority will be happy, will be satisfied, and you are the one they'll run to if they have a difficult case. So what more do you want?
Now, see, one of the most important aspects of any HOD who runs a huge department in a very, very renowned institution is how you deal with the management, like the director of medical services or the principal. What are your secrets? Are you,
I haven't.
are you a
I
rebel?
think. I think this part of the interview can. I haven't been HOD for that long, Dr. Pada. I've taken over charge not very long back. So I think I should be able to answer this question better at the next edition rather than doing it now. I've been an HOD for about a month to now.
Yeah, okay.
New role, I'm assuming, and I have yet to test the waters very carefully. But
Yeah,
I
but
think
why do you say that? I'm too confident that whatever you have done, you've done well, and you'll
yes,
be different in this
yes.
area.
I think you should make sure that if you err, you should err on the side of your faculty. The administration will always have their own goals to meet. And if you start following them without actually looking at the welfare of the people who have placed their faith in you, I speak for the department. I'm supposed to speak for the students, for the faculty. And if I disregard that and just to, create a happy space for myself, if I bend into the administrators, that's not a good thing to happen. And I let down so many people by doing that. So I don't think if I ever, as I move forward, there's only one guiding principle. I'm answerable to a set of people, and I should never let them down. They're looking up at me. They want me to, to say what they couldn't have said. And their welfare and well-being, both physical, mental, financial, whatever, is my responsibility. I've been given that charge. I have taken that mantle on myself. So I think I should be able to do well. It's too early for me to say because I haven't been there that long, but I'm sure I'll be able to do justice to the department.
How good a mother are you to your children? If they have to give you out of 10, how many marks will how many marks will they give you out of 10?
How do you define a good mother? First, you tell me that, then.
No, I can't define.
No, good mother. Good mother. I think shouldn't the kids be answering that rather than good mother? But yes,
No. Yes.
Every mother thinks that she's done well. And she does try to do the best what she can for her kids. But my kids are doing well in life. So I think I've not done a very bad job. I think I've done a fairly good job with them. They're both well placed in life. They are stable. They are happy. They're contented, and they are progressing.
And what is that? What is the secret, and what is your contribution?
See, I think every mother does that. There is hardly a mother in the world who will actually go ahead and say that I haven't done anything for my kids. But yes, I was never a very helicopter mom kind of a mom, Dr. Pata, and I give this lecture very often. I have become more of a motivational speaker than anything else, and I give this advice to the younger faculty very, very often these days, that don't get overstressed. Don't kind of be a helicopter mom. Don't keep pouncing upon your kids 24 hours a day. And they need space. They can manage. Just give them the independence. Just let them be. Why do you have to budge into their life and find out what they're studying, what they're eating, why they're going out, when they're coming back? Give them a little space. It's all right. They will do well. Trust them and give them the confidence to make their own decisions. As a parent, it's our job to protect them. Yes, it's our job to tell them that they're good, to encourage them. But at the same time, you have to tell them that it's okay to lose. It's not so bad to fall back. let me give an example. You remember that movie Tare Zameen Pe? Have you seen it? Now, post Tare Zameen Pe, we are all trying to become our children's friends. We've been scared into, that don't bully your child, don't talk badly to him. You have to, all that psychological thing about, not bullying your child and trying to understand them psychology and trying to, de-stress them. We've forgotten to be parents. We've become the kids' friends, but they need a parent. They have so many friends. Where is the parent gone? It's your job to discipline them. It's your job to tell them this is right and this is wrong. You are nice and friendly and sweet and not stressing them. It's okay. But then who will do that job? You have to occasionally scold them. You have to occasionally give a tight slap. Sorry, it sounds so unprofessional, but you have to be strict occasionally. You have to tell them what's right, what's wrong. You have to, say no. They have to learn to accept that. So I think that part I've done. I was a fairly strict mother. My kids knew that, of course, every mother has this soft side where she's doing good for her children, but I had a very strict, I had a set of rules which were, there was a little line which they could not cross. So, and the kids are very smart, Dr. Pata. Kids are extremely smart. They understand which side of their bread is buttered. And they will very, very, very soon understand, what they can get away with and what they can't. Like, I hear mothers complaining that the kids are fussy eaters and stuff like that, and they don't eat vegetables and, they don't listen to them. But then that's our fault, isn't it? When I came back from work in the evening, I would insist that our children finish the vegetables which I had cooked for them in the afternoon. And they knew that if they didn't do it, they will get no food. No food. So they very quickly understand that you can leave the roti, you can leave the milk, but you have to finish the veggies because that's what mom wants. And then, the rules are very clear. They're very well laid out. You don't have to bend because they understand that the moment they cry, they throw a tantrum, you're going to bend, they will do it every time. So a little strictness is good. Laying down rules is good. And too much of interference is bad. Give them space. I mean, why do you have to do their maths for them and do their chapters for them and interfere? I mean, these days that's happening a lot, There's just one kid and both the parents are so focused on that kid that he doesn't grow up. Even a class 10th child is waiting for his mother to take leave, sit at home so that he can study. I mean, what is that? So I think I've done that job well. And I have two grown-up boys now. Both my boys are doing very well. They're very brilliant boys. I've been really blessed with two absolutely brilliant children. They're academically very well. My eldest son is an IIT Delhi graduate. He's done mathematics from IIT Delhi, and then he went to MIT Boston. He's done his master's from Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Boston, and now he's working in New York. And the younger one's also an engineer. He's done his engineering from Netaji Subhash University, Delhi, and now he's working in Bangalore. So I think they're doing well, and I'm quite happy with the way things have turned out.
Wonderful, wonderful. Dr. G.D. Sharma has raised his hand. Sir, please unmute and come in. This topic is very close to his heart. Sir, G.D. sir?
Yeah, that's a great achievement for any parent when the kids do well.
Yes, sir.
And to my mind, in every home, mother has a very important role.
Absolutely.
And I am also blessed. My daughter is a professor of breast radiology.
Okay.
She was trained in Cleveland Clinic for 15 years.
Right.
She was associate professor there. And currently she's professor in Baylor School of Medicine.
Wow.
And my son is assistant professor in pediatric interventional pain.
Oh.
My son and son-in-law both are anesthesiologists turned into pain doctors.
Right.
So my son-in-law practices full-time anesthesia. He has his huge private practice. And my son is younger, so he has done his pediatric intervention. There are around only 12 slots in America every year. So he did it from Colorado University. Denver. So it's a great.
Madam has got what percentage role in shaping up children, and what is your
Yes,
percentage?
I think my percentage came only after medical school more.
Right.
And there was a time in our life when we were running a huge private practice. We had 40 surgical beds of our own. And when my daughter, who is elder, she was in class 5, one morning, both of us were busy and she was dropped to the driver. The maid dropped her to the driver to be taken to the school. And while she came from the school, then again, maid received her. It happened in a given week for, say, 3-4 times. Then we sat down and realized this should be sometime in 94. Then I calculated, like a businessman, that how much money we are earning through obstetrics. And in 94, it was around 2.5 lakhs.
Oh.
So in one slash, I said I would do a couple of more traumas. In one day, we deleted all the obstetric work. We said we are not going to do obstetrics anymore. We will do only cool gynecology. So my wife started working half day, and I think that made a lot of difference.
Nice to hear that, sir. Dr. Ranjan, now
That's very
since
nice, very nice. But I have another take on this. My kids were always received by maids, and they realized that their mom was busy. It's okay. So that, yes, she should be there all the time, but that guilt which the mother is made to carry just because she's following a career path and she's just as busy as the father actually is very detrimental for their own mental health. So, for younger colleagues listening in, yes, you need to do what Sir has said, cut down on your work, look after your children. But should you feel guilty just because you're looking after yourself? I don't think that's a wise thing to do. My husband actually had a lot of contribution in this, in not in bringing up the kids because he was a busy surgeon, but in supporting my decisions, because he would say that yes, you have to be there for the kids, but it's the kids' destiny that their mom is busy. You understand? He said, the kid is born to you. It's his destiny that has brought him here in your lab. So it's his destiny that his mom is an anesthesiologist and she's a workaholic. It's his destiny. Why are you so worried about it? It's okay. So just that kind of support, decreases your guilt because you are busy. You have a call, you have to rush to the hospital, you have a Whipple's which has taken a bad turn, and you are not free as you're supposed to be. The retroperitoneal tumor which you had induced in the morning started bleeding, and you have to be there for that patient till you shift him to the ICU. So your kids do take a back seat, but it's okay. It's okay. It's not the quantity of time you spend with them. It's the quality. And I'll tell you this as a mother, as a working professional, as a doctor. The kids understand that their mother is a working professional and respect her more rather than her being 24/7 at home to clean up their shit. Do you understand? So, the pride which my children had, if they were playing alone in the park, I have experienced this myself because, somebody came and told me this, that in the park, if the child is playing alone and somebody says, Mama, kahan hai? Where is your mother? Why are you playing? He's saying, Meri mummy has gone to so-and-so place to deliver a lecture. The pride in the child's voice, that sense of achievement which the child feels because his mother, he knows, is doing more for them. She's doing the house, she's doing the cooking, she's looking after a hospital, she's working, and she's doing a good job. So there is no need to go down the guilt path at all. I keep telling the younger colleagues, and there's no need to be, you have to be there for your children. There's absolutely no two ways about it. But physically being present 24/7 is not required. You need to spend quality time with your children rather than quantity. And they understand.
I have a small point to say. While I talk to a lot of younger generation, what is happening when somehow the anesthesia group I have worked, there were around one gentleman and 4 ladies in that group. So what happens when the mom is late, the kids exploit her sense of guilt that I could not give
Yes.
time, I'm late. Now they put certain odd demands. Then the mothers, to satisfy their guilt, then all
Yes.
demands are met with.
Yes, I agree. Absolutely, sir.
So the
So,
kids are very smart today.
yes,
They
I
know
told
the
you,
mom was
they're
supposed to be
very
at
smart.
5. She'll
Yes.
come at 7. He will start ringing, ye bhi le aana, ye bhi le aana, ye bhi le
So,
aana.
sir, that is where your balance comes in. That
Yeah.
is where, you need to realize that that's not the way to be. And if you give in once, I don't know, it's very difficult. These are very, these topics don't have a straight yes or a no, you
I
can,
think there are many ways to reach the goal.
yes,
As long as
yes,
the goal is reached and
yes,
achieved, it is
yes,
fair and good,
yes,
because every situation is different.
yes,
Specialities are different,
yes,
demands are different.
yes,
But eventually, when the outcome is good, you know,
yes. The
somebody who
outcome is
tops,
good. And
somebody who tops
overall,
the university,
see, another thing I'd like to, since we're on the topic of kids, you can't tell them and expect them to follow. They will see you and do. See, in fact, the teachers in my kids' school, the teachers would come and ask me when I'd never missed a PTM. But I was there exactly for 5 minutes, Dr. Pata. I was there at 8 o'clock. I was with the first parent, be there before the teacher came in, attend the PTM, and they knew I was a busy doctor, and I would go back and start my theater at 9 o'clock. So, but yes, I attended everything, and they would ask me, "Ma'am, aap kya karte ho? You have my kids are brilliant, and they're very, very well behaved." So they'd ask me, I said, "You should be telling me how to bring up kids. I shouldn't be telling you how to bring up kids. It was the opposite way around. So teachers would come and ask me, "What are you doing to your children?" And I said, "I'm not doing anything. If my children are studying this because they see me study. See, I can't tell them, I can't keep watching television and expect your child to keep studying." So I was studying more than them. I have a chapter to finish, I have a paper to write, I have a lecture to take tomorrow, I have to study for a case. So you sitting with your thick books, poring over them, not watching television. So the children are obviously studying with you. So they see and they learn.
I also must compliment. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yes, sir, please.
In my life, besides surgery, it has been my interest to see all these other non-surgical aspects of life. And I have found, which is true in your case also, all genuine teachers get Lord's blessing
Yes.
in this form.
Yes, sir.
Some of my medical friends who make a lot of money by this or the other modality, then they give 2 crore rupees for their MBBS admission, 4 crores for their MD, 6 crores for the DM, right?
Yes, sir.
But all good medical teachers are blessed by Lord to have kids who
Absolutely.
require nothing.
Nothing,
So that's,
sir.
you are not acknowledging that, blessing
Yes,
of
sir,
the Lord.
I do, sir. We've been talking about kids. We haven't talked about anything else, but I'm a very contented person, and my contentment essentially lies not from the fact about how much you have, but because I've been blessed with kids which are so good. So that's my Jama Punji in life. Brilliant,
That's the best thing.
well
That's
placed,
the best thing to
well
happen.
behaved. I mean, we are traditional parents, we expect a certain thing from our children, and if your children are doing that for you, I think that's what more blessing can you ask for in life?
Yes.
If I can ask you, but that's very nice to hear about parenthood. How many marks would you give yourself for being a spouse, as a spouse?
Oh, 200%, 20 on 10.
Really? That's great. I didn't expect this, ma'am, but that's what, because,
Planned all when he needs it. I'm the wonderful cook when he needs it. And I've been a mother to his children. I have a beautiful house. I'm very fond of art and culture and stuff. I have a lovely house. That's done up, and I have given him the opportunity to do what he wanted. Look, I also wanted to go to UK and go. I mean, I could have done a lot more than what I had done. But at one point, my husband decided that he wanted to leave service and become a transplant surgeon. This is way back in 2006. He had a steady government job like me. He just gave it up one day and said, "I'm going to do my master's." He's in fact he has a master's in liver transplant from the Henry Bismuth Institute in Paris. And he just left. So I said, "Please go." I mean, it's all right. I mean, you want to do something, you go ahead. And I couldn't leave my children during those times because he was not there. And I didn't have any parental backup because my in-laws were not here, my parents were not here, and I didn't have that kind of support system with a lot of other families might have. So I kind of stayed around. There was a time when I didn't know how I was going to, the fees of the children, where would it come from? Because we were paying from our pockets for the course, and he was staying in Europe, in Paris. So I think I've done a fantastic job.
That's great. Now, you see, you are a very popular speaker that you're invited to different conferences. What is the secret? Not all the clinicians get invited. Some are more invited than the others.
Yes, I think being a good teacher helps. Knowing your subject helps. It really helps. These days, conferences means that anybody can talk about anything. You shouldn't do that. You should just stick to your niche area of expertise, because what you do will show in your talk. I mean, it just shows that, you're just talking from experience or from limited knowledge acquired off the net. It's very simple these days to take knowledge from them. One click of a button and you have enough information available. And secondly, I think the joy in your work, your communication skills really help. Your communication skills, you should be able to understand the pulse of the audience. You should be able to, when you make an eye contact with the audience, you should know whether they're receiving you or not, how you should change track, whether your talk is effective, are they getting bored, should you cut this down? I mean, you should not. These are things which are very dynamic, and you should be able to pick them up. So communication skills, knowledge of your subject, and a sense of humor is what makes a big dhamaka. It's a good package to have. So I think I've been blessed with all three. So I think I've been blessed that I have received so much of love from people that they want me to be there because they think that it can add value to their conference or workshop or whatever. And your hard work shows, your body of work shows, your hard work shows, and you should talk about what you do. I think that's very important. Randomly talking about any topic doesn't help. So I have a niche area of work, largely obstetrics and pediatrics, and I stick only to that so that I can talk from experience.
Wonderful. Now, I also understand that you're a fitness freak. But where do you get the time? See, morning you have to prepare whatever you have to prepare for the family things. Where do you schedule your fitness, and what sort of fitness do you do? How often?
Sir, I go to the gym. Now, ever since I've become HOD, in fact, I must admit, it's become a little less because I get busy in meetings and administrative responsibilities, and I get delayed while coming home. But otherwise, at least 5 days a week, I'm an avid gymmer. Mornings are busy because morning means lunch and breakfast and go driving to work, and it's a little difficult in the morning. When the kids were small, it was difficult then also, and it's still difficult. But evenings, when I come back from work, I've had a cup of tea, then I do my household work. As I said, I'm very fond of cooking, so I cook and I go to the market, my vegetables and stuff like that. But then I have kept 1 hour for myself in the evening. That time my phone is switched off. I try not to answer many calls at that time. And then I go to the gym almost 5 days a week. So I'm a very avid gymmer. And if I can't make that, then I at least go out for a walk or some form of exercise. I make sure that I exercise a little bit every single day. And so fitness is a lifestyle change. It's not about the gym. Fitness is a mindset. It's the way you think. So you will find me taking the stairs at the airport. I don't take the escalator. You will find me taking the long road instead of the walkway. These are smaller things which you need. If I have a phone in my hand, you'll find me walking across the room rather than just sitting and answering a call. So fitness is a way of life. It's a thought process. It's not just going for a walk or going to the gym or doing yoga or, just playing badminton. It's these little things which, there was a very interesting study published many years back which said that if you don't change anything else in your life, this is the time when computers had come in. around 90s. So just using a typewriter, you know, left, right, left, right, left, right. If you change nothing else in your life, no change in food, no change in habits, no change in daily routine, just the absence of this typewriter can make you gain 2 kgs in 1 year. It seems so simple. It's like, you know, it's just one activity like this. So every little bit helps. When you shift over from a manual car to an automatic car, you gain weight.
Okay.
You know, what I'm trying to say is every little bit helps, and these little things are the ones which help. You don't have to be majorly, you know, pump. Yes, of course, that's good. But if you're not able to pump iron in the gym, it's all right. You can still be fit. Fitness is a life-changing, it's a thought process. It's the way you think and eat and work that brings fitness to you. So I'm an absolute fitness junkie. I have to work out. I have to go to the gym. I do a lot of cardio. I do a lot of aerobics. I do a lot of muscle and strength training. I lift up weights. I do all that.
Now, you're such a bubbly and a sort of active individual. I'm sure you must be having a lot of friends.
Yes, sir, I do.
Do you give time to them, and how do you schedule your, time with your friends?
I think that is where I think a little bit of I should be spending more time with them, but see, time is limited, sir. So I shift my time to my extracurricular activities or my gymming or my evening walks or something. Yes, I should be spending more time with friends. I can't spend as much as I would have wanted to, but I think again, it's the quality which makes the difference, not quantity. So occasionally when you bond with friends, you go out for a dinner with them, or just a phone call will help you bond. So it's not necessary to spend the quantity of time, rather quality is important. But yes, as your responsibilities keep increasing, the time which you should have spent with friends becomes less. That is a fact, sir. I can't escape that.
Now, somewhere I read that, in a day, your waking hours should be divided into three uh, pies, and one is that the time you give to your family, one third you give to your friends, and one third you give to yourself. Do you give time to yourself? Do you get into meditation, religion, and puja
But
part?
my time for myself is this time which I spend for exercise, either in the gym or for a walk, or I don't watch too much of television. As you were talking about time, I don't kind of have too much time spent either on the phone or the WhatsApp or television. That is where I save my time. My time for myself is this time which I spend in the gym. And since I travel a lot, that time is me time. I may
Right,
want to
right.
read a book. I may want to, make a phone call. I may want to just sit with myself. That time which I spend traveling is my time. So I spend it from, and yes, I do look after myself. I do prioritize myself. I love to shop. I spend time shopping. I look after myself. I think it's about prioritizing. Time is the same for everybody. For the person who's a couch potato to our prime minister, everybody has the same 24 hours. So it depends on what you need to prioritize. If you want to prioritize yourself, look after yourself in whatever way, whether it is meditation, whether it is going to for an exercise, a yoga session, a spa session, a shopping session, everything that makes you happy is me time. So yes, I do look after myself.
Delhi is a place where so much activity goes on. There's a trade fair, leather fair, book fair, this fair, film festival. Do you indulge in all those?
A few of them, depends on what I see. Trade fair is my weakness. I have one CL reserved for trade fair every year. So me and my friend have that date fixed. She's a very close, a school friend of mine. She's a professor of microbiology. And we have one chutti reserved for trade fair. We stock up on cash, take a backpack, and go off in the metro at 10 o'clock in the morning, spend the whole day together, shop till our cash finishes and bags are full, and then come back in the evening. So you should do what makes you happy. Yes, little bit, that same time you could probably spend seeing a movie. I remember when my children were very small, we didn't really have time because both of us, that's the time when you're busiest, your kids are small, schools, tuitions, your work demand. You are the youngest faculty member. You are the one who's doing the maximum work in the department. So we used to catch a movie, the last show. So what Puneet used to come back after his transplant, and I would meet him in the car downstairs. Don't come up, I used to say. The kids would be sleeping by that time. I'd pack 2 paratha rolls and give them to him in the car, carry a cup of coffee, and I said, I'll meet you in the car. Don't come up. We would go watch a movie and then come back home. So you need to do this. You need to find these little bits for yourself. How you do it depends on you. Time management is extremely essential. Like I went to the trade fair recently, this current edition, but since, as I said, I was head of the department, I just didn't have time. I couldn't take that leave this year. So at 4 o'clock, when the departmental work had stopped, I called up. We had already fixed up. I planned, I didn't take my car because parking is an issue. I took a cab. I met her at the trade fair gate. We just met for 3 hours. But those 3 hours were therapeutic and would, last me a whole year till I do that next year again. So you have to learn to do this to yourself.
See, I always thought the anesthesiologists sleep a lot. Is it true? And how do you look forward for the weekends, and how do you spend your weekends effectively?
I will be very guilty, but my weekends are actually spent at work, sir. I am a very passionate lifesaver. I have BLS and ACLS very close to my heart, and I spend most weekends doing some workshop or the other or teaching. And unfortunately for all of us here in this forum, every conference is on a weekend. Why we do that, I don't know. Why we ruin our Sundays and Saturdays for some work and for some conference, why can't we do it over the weekdays? Of course, there are different issues for that. But yes, because everything is on a weekend, if you want to go, you have to sacrifice your weekend. And I do that a lot. I travel a lot. I go to many conferences, workshops. Academics is what drives me. It's my passion. I love to teach. I love to, it's what drives me. And everything else is also on a weekend. So my weekends are busy, sir. But because I do it with a passion, it keeps me happy. I don't regret that I have not had a single weekend off for the past, I think 6 or 7 consecutive weekends now.
Really?
I'm either doing BLS, I'm doing ACLS, I'm doing some airway workshop, but it's my passion. It drives me. It keeps me happy. So that is another way of unwinding myself, because we have a group of friends who do this together. So that's what drives me and keeps me happy. But yes, weekends should be for unwinding. It's very necessary to have that life balance, work-life balance, as it's so called. Give a little time to yourself. The biggest problem I find people having is that they get caught up in the rat race. Do you understand? You have 2 presentations. How come I have 1? You've been called to 3 places. How come I've missed out on this workshop? Why haven't I got an invite? I must also deliver a lecture. I must also publish. That rat race is completely eating you away. I don't think you should fall into that. You should just create your own niche and be more content. You'll get your own time. You set your own pace. There's so much for everybody. It'll fall into place eventually. So that rat race is what is actually driving people mad.
Yeah. Now, in this sort of a busy schedule, where is the time for cooking and experimentation cooking? Who is your fan in your cooking?
My kids, sir. My kids love that I cook
But
for
they're
them.
not with you now.
Now they're not. They're not now. But I cook. I have continued cooking. And of course, I cook less now than I did when my kids were here. But my son comes home, say work from home every 3 months. He'll be here for 15 days. The elder one keeps coming every 6 months. So I cook for them. I cook for other people around me. I cook for the family. I cook for Puneet's friends. I cook for my friends.
What are you good at? What are your favorite recipes?
Uh, I'm good at baking, sir. I'm good at desserts. I'm good at
Yeah.
baking, and I'm good at non-veg. I
Very.
Yeah, and it's very therapeutic. It's very de-stressing. Different flavors, different types of cuisines, mixing and matching, trying to unleash your creativity in the kitchen. It's very satisfying, sir. And dishing out a good meal, which brings a smile to everybody's face, is such a high. You know, when your kids enjoy your meal, they know that a busy mom at the zenith of her career is actually spending time for them in the kitchen and bringing out good stuff. It's a big high. It's very satisfying. Creatively also, it's very satisfying. So there is a time for everything if you want.
Right.
You can squeeze in a little bit. Don't see too much of TV. Spend that time in the kitchen. Don't. You can forego the serial sometimes, and then it depends on how you wish to unwind. So I wish to unwind by cooking. I think that not only the way to a man's heart, but to the way to everyone's heart is through their
Yeah.
stomach.
Very,
So,
very true. Now, I've seen a couple of your pictures in social media, and everywhere you're in beautiful saris. What is this? Because sari, I always thought is a South Indian garment. How is that you fall in love with them? And actually, they suit you so well. You carry them well. You drape yourself well. What is the secret? Why? What is the sari? The liking towards the saris.
sir, I picked up this love for saris from my mother, actually. I'm a Punjabi I'm a Sikh, actually. And my mother was very fond of saris, and I started wearing them very early in my career. The first time I wore a sari was when I was an intern, and I wore it well, and kind of everybody appreciated. And I liked the fact that I was different from the others. So, and then eventually, I think her love, I saw her love for saris. I saw her taking care of her saris, So every sari for me has a story. So I started falling in love with them, and now I just love them. There is no other way to describe my relationship with saris. Uh, I think they're beautiful. The fabric, the color, the designs. There's a huge variety in the country, and they're so exquisite. I just love wearing them. I have a huge collection, so I have a very huge, varied, and vibrant collection of saris. I mean, it must be running in hundreds.
When do you wear them? Because as an anesthesiologist, I rarely see our anesthesiologists in saris. Where anything outside the operation theater is a sari.
Sir, actually, see, yes, I know it's very difficult for an anesthesiologist because of the fact that your professional life and your work requires you to be, moving in and out of theaters, changing rapidly, being ready for emergencies. There's a lot of physical work, standing. I agree. But then, other than that, they will get opportunities. When you get that opportunity, you should I wear a sari. When I ensure that when I have to go for a meeting, I wear a sari. When I have to go for a class, I wear a sari. When I have to go for a conference, I wear a sari. Yes, there are times in the theater when you know that you can't change. You will not probably have the time or the space to change. That's all right. But then if you make a conscious effort, you will find an opportunity to wear a sari. A sari is so beautiful, sir. It's so graceful. You're fat, you look good in a sari. You're thin, you look good in a sari. You're short, you look good. You're tall, you look good. It's one garment which makes everyone look beautiful. I mean, how much variation can you actually have in a pair of jeans or a kurti? But imagine a sari, from a heavy silk sari for a wedding to a trendy sari for a corporate wear to a sari for an evening cocktail party. There's a variety and a choice for everybody. So, and it's a beautiful garment. Not only does it, the other thing, sari exudes power, sari exudes confidence, sari exudes that sense of, it empowers you. You walk into an official meeting in the ministry in a sari, and everybody is going to stand up and take notice. No? The darban at the gate will also say, "Yes, ma'am, please come." To the other colleagues who will offer a chair to you, and you end up in a crumpled kurti or a pair of jeans. You cannot make an impact, notwithstanding from jeans or from any other garment. But the the allure, the sophistication, the glamour, and the power which a sari exudes is unparalleled. So I just love them. I have a sari probably from every corner of the country, every
Wonderful.
corner, every color, every style, and I wear them with a lot of love.
And
And
you also choose appropriate jewelry to go
yes,
with.
sir. Yes, sir. So in fact, one of the most frequent requests I get from my younger colleagues is to hold a sari wearing workshop. I've had innumerable requests, and I think one day I'll do it finally. So, from I get requests for starting YouTube channels for my fitness, for my cooking, for my saris. But I think the sari thing I'll take up one day. So I
You
try
should.
to find time.
So nice talking to you. I can talk forever, but then we have so many viewers watching. I'll open the house. I'll start with Dr. Vani now. Yeah, Vidya.
Yeah, Dr. Vani is here.
Yes, she was here initially. Yes, ma'am is there.
You have to unmute Dr. Vani.
Yes, I'm unmuted. Yes, Pata.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
see, your valuable comments.
In one line, I'm older than her, and she lived the life that I lived. I was a medical college teacher. My husband let me do what I like, except that my husband's an anesthetist. I'm a gynecologist. I had 2 sons who did well. Everything was perfect, except that I don't buy saris. But I really enjoyed it. It resonated with me completely. Thank you very much for the talk.
Thank you so. Thank you for your blessings, ma'am.
And we wore saris in Jipma from the age of 16 because our principal would insist that we wear saris. So I started a little earlier than
And they're so graceful. They exude so much of dignity. And, it's so formal when you want it to be, and it's so informal when you don't want it to be formal. It's such a beautiful blend of modern
But the
as
usual,
well as tradition.
the usual excuse people put is it takes time. But when you're wearing it for so long, it takes only 2 minutes.
I learned to wear saris, slowly. I picked up my love, but eventually I'd see my seniors wearing, in the changing room, I'd slightly sit on the corner and see how my consultant was tying her sari, and then pick up these smaller nuances from them. And then practice helps. Practice it takes a couple of minutes to tie a sari. So
yes, it's very fast.
Yeah, very fast. It's just the practice. I think it's more the mental block than actually the difficulty in wearing a sari. And, the fact that you associate a modern women with Western wear is the concept we need to break. You can be equally modern and chic with a sari. Why do you have to wear, I mean, I have nothing against jeans, but why do you have to wear It's called Western for a reason. Why do you have to wear Western wear to look smart? You can look.
And I agree also that when one works, one really, if you study, the kids will study. We don't have to look after them. And therefore, I've got 2 sons just like you, and both my sons cook. So my daughters-in-law are very happy with me. So there are a lot of good things that come with.
Yes, ma'am. Both my sons can also cook, ma'am. They cook
so
very
one day
well.
I told my son that you're not parenting properly. He said, what parenting did you do? So my husband was hurt, but I thought he's right, because nowadays kids spend more time with their children. They talk about work-life balance.
Yes.
And we are having a retirement work-life balance, but we didn't have it at work. It was nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
And dealing with Patta's questions is a little tough. I think you foxed Patta today. Patta is it's very tough to deal with Patta's questions normally. You did a very good job.
I mean, she gets 100 out of 100 actually for whatever, because I think these days, as you say, that there are more girls into medicine, but they should have real good role models, and I'm sure you're one of them.
But Patta, you're looking beautiful today. In your dress, you're better than her today.
Thank you.
Your kurta is more pretty.
Thank you so much. Anjali.
Yeah. Excellent talk, sir. Both of you, and you have taken it to a great height. Only one technical or question, madam. As you are a sari lover.
Anjali is a surgeon and her husband is an anesthesiologist.
Okay. So one question, madam, technicality. How to manage our BMI as per the stitching of the blouse? That is one. because that is a frequent changer event.
Tell you, ma'am.
Or you have some common blouses which suits on all the colors. That is one. Second is how many times you have chosen that you are hurriedly going to a operation theater and you could not manage to get the matching of the sari, like sari petticoat and blouse and pins, and you have to dress up. So these are the two practical questions. Vidya madam will also agree with me, because this is a clinch. So because of that, my husband says, please don't try for sari today. Please get it as early as possible. So these are some of the technical
Ma'am?
questions in every lady's
Yes,
thought. Ma'am,
absolutely.
don't-
You just need to get a little organized. I always put out my things in the night. It just takes 5 minutes, but I always do it. Like I plan the tiffin in the morning. I plan what I need to wear in the morning and I put it aside, including the safety pins and the socks or the sand, whatever I need to wear. I put it out and I plan it. And I think in my house, I have a set place for everything. You know, there's a set place for the safety pin and there's a set place for the blouse, and you know, it just requires a little planning, nothing else. Regarding the blouse and the fit, as we keep expanding in life, as the years go on and menopause hits, the blouses, yes, become a problem. But these days, ma'am, two things have really helped. One, nobody wants to wear a matching blouse. You can just get away very easily with wearing a contrast blouse with anything and everything. You just don't need to match. So it's okay, whatever blouse fits, you wear it. Second thing, these days, ma'am, I noticed that these days blouses are stretchable. You have a lot of ready-made blouses. You have blouses. I was seeing on one Instagram page, they have elastic here. Can you see this? Not in this blouse, but they have elastic here and they have an elastic on the side. So it just expands and shrinks according to your size. You can get such kind of blouses and you will be sorted for life. You don't have to ever get them altered. I think I'll order one or two. Get a few set of blouses which match with every sari. One red, one maroon, one black, one white, one silver, one gold. And you're sorted. You don't need any other blouse. You can wear any sari with them. And the special saris will always have a special blouse. It's these daily workwear saris where you have a problem. Get these couple of blouses, mix and match. Get some couple of printed or, you know, these blouses with multicolors, which will go with every sari, and you will be sorted.
So nice of you, ma'am. Whatever I think, as per your suggestions, that anesthetists are very meticulous in everything. As per my husband's suggestion also.
Absolutely. If you were smarter, you would also be an anesthetist.
Yeah,
What you are.
So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Vidya.
And these days, ma'am, saris also pre-draped. You know, pre-draped saris have come. They're completely stitched. You just have to tie them like a skirt and pull the palla on yourself, and you're ready in about 15 seconds.
Yeah.
So the younger girls can try that. In fact, a lot of them, after my encouragement, are doing it. You know, they know madam is coming, so they will also wear a sari and come because I'm coming and wearing a sari. It actually has brought about a difference in my department. A lot of the younger girls have developed this love for saris.
Yeah. Thank you.
Dr. Sai Janani, would you unmute and come in?
Hi, sir. Wonderful to listen to Ranju
Can we
ma'am.
see you?
Hi, Sai. How are you?
I'm on the way actually.
Okay.
So it's really wonderful to listen to Ranju ma'am and how she juggles the whole day. Ma'am is the life of every conference and every get together, and and ma'am is one of the best dressed in almost every event. In the whole thing, formal, informal, everything. And she really rocks it. And I have one small question for ma'am.
Yes, please.
That is, so do you do any kind of meditation or anything to stay in peace? Like we all have these environmental
Yes.
challenges
Yes.
in our workplace or other things. So do you have any hacks for that?
Yes. I don't do much meditation. I'm not a very meditation kind of a person, although people have been telling me to go ahead and do it. but you must have your little own hack for unwinding. You should know what drives you and what can bring you down. Once you identify these triggers in your life, you should be able to manage them, And I believe that contentment is very important for this little happiness which we are all looking for. Uh, my nickname is Sunshine. My friends call me that. I try to stay very happy. I try to stay very contented. And that is an inner choice. So, it's not a universal rule, Sai. You can't identify or take this message from me as to what I do to unwind. You have to find your own little peace. You have to find your own little trigger. You have to find what gives you that little peace or happiness, Uh, have you heard of Bulle Shah?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, एक बारी बाबा बुल्ले शाह से किसी ने पूछा कि आप इतनी गरीबी में भी खुश कैसे रहते हैं? So you know what Baba Bulle Shah said? चढ़दे सूरज टलदे देखे, चढ़दे सूरज टलदे देखे, बुझदे दीवे बलदे देखे, हीरे दा कोई मुल न जाने, खोटे सिक्के चलदे देखे. People may not know the value of diamonds, but I have seen khote sikke also managing to do well. Jina da na koi rab, ove puttar palde dekhe, odi रहमत नाल बंदे, पानी उत्ते चलदे वेखे. Then it was, sirte labban chhawa, something like that it said. बड़े लोकी नंगे पैर फिरदे, सिर ते लब्बन छावा, मैनू दाता सब कुछ दिता, क्यों ना शुक्र मनावा. Please practice, you understand, मैनू रब ने सब कुछ दिता, क्यों ना शुक्र मनावा.
Gratitude.
Practice this gratitude in your life. Start your day with gratitude. Write down what you're grateful for in life. The ability to connect with you today, the ability to dress up and sit here, the ability to see, eat, smell, to have a home, to get up in the morning, you have a car to drive to, you have a workplace to go to, you have people to listen to, you have food to eat, that list, believe me, Sai, will be endless. Make that list every day in the morning. Say a little prayer to God, and this attitude of gratitude will change your life. Believe me, it will change your life. So practice this gratitude every single day. Be thankful for what you cannot keep complaining about everything in life. Yes, but why don't you look at the positive side? Today, we have this opportunity. This is such a grateful godsend for me. Every little thing has a positive aspect. Focus on that positive and you will never feel depressed. You have to make that conscious decision to be happy. It's you yourself. Nobody else can do it for you. So think about how grateful you should be about what you have today, and you will never be unhappy.
That's so wonderful, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Vidya, you're muted. Yeah, you have to unmute.
Develop a hobby. Dancing is also one of my hobbies. So develop a hobby. If you think that helps you unwind, do that. It could just be 5 minutes. It could be once in a week, but at least you know what will help you unwind.
Dr. Amit Rastogi has typed, your advice to parents who have a single child, do we need to be more lenient and malleable?
Right.
Ranjit Baral is a flamboyant physician from Nepal and is our contemporary in JIPMER. Can you unmute Ranjit and come in? Yeah, Vidya, back to you.
So, Dr. Ranju just mentioned about the dancing and all that. So, we, though times are changing, we still have this, concept of how a teacher or a senior should behave or do. How do you break those barriers? Like, on the dance stage, you are like the youngest or you are like the first year PG there, and there's no, when the whole Lady Harding group is dancing, you are no different from them. How did you Did you never have a barrier, or how, if you
No,
had
ma'am,
it, how
I
did you
think
break
these
it?
barriers are more in the mind than anything else. The students, or they, you know, yes, you need to draw a line. In the department, they can't mess with you. You know, you have that when you're in the department, you are the head or you're the teacher, you draw that line which they can't cross. But when you move outside the theater, or you move to a ground which is common, then I think you should let the barriers down. You should let it fall. You should be one with them. That's how you can enjoy with them. So, dancing with peaches at a party is not synonymous with letting them have their field day in the OT. That's up to you to draw that line. They know that how strict I am. I'm a very strict teacher, ma'am. And they know they can't mess with me in the department. But then as we cross the line from the department outside, it's good. You know, one of the girls had once come and said, ma'am, we really love, for all of us who were at a party with the department, that we really love this good side of you. It so I think it helps you bond with them. And gymming as well as dancing with the younger people is what keeps you young. You know what is sticking, you know what is driving them, and you can use it to connect with them. See, they have every age or every has this special thing which drives them. Now, they don't read textbooks, they read only on iPads. So connect with them there. You know, I tell them that their iPads are not meant for watching porn. It's meant for studying. You know, you resonate with them at their level that, yes, it's all right to carry your iPads. Because if you say don't carry them, they won't listen to you. So you might as well encourage them to study with that iPad, because that's what they're going to do. Tell them where to find the right material, how to study, how to effectively. So you have to connect with them at their level to make an effective statement. Draw your lines, but yes, it's nice to connect with them at that level, ma'am. They gel with you much better.
Dr. Ravi Shankar, my teachers also, and we had a common teacher, so to say, my mentor. Many years ago, she was like that. I mean, all the postgraduates be jealous of anesthesia department parties, because madam will be there with her mug of beer, and you know, she'll let everyone do whatever they want. And but inside, once you enter the hospital, kisi ki madalo ki kuch, you know, you cross the line. It was not a line; it was like a border, like. So, yeah. So, if any of the others want to you know, ask any questions, or you know, say something, please feel free to unmute. Anjali, you have a camera on. Want
Yeah,
to say something?
Madam, I would like to ask, what is the mindset of the madam once patient has been induced and there is 1.5 hours for the next case. In that session, what madam does? What
In
is
other
her?
words, between cases, what do you do?
Yeah.
No,
Like you
not
play
not
Sudoku?
between. She's telling
Because
during or between.
Ma'am, these days between
one
cases,
patient has been induced, given
yes,
Pavlon, there is 1.5 hour, and next
yes.
goes for the
And that is the time I have a lot of administrative work to do. So that is the time when I'm doing my files and my letters and emails and official things. But otherwise, when I was a younger faculty member, that would be the time I would use to, you know, do my academic work. I was doing at that time, cell phones weren't very popular. There was not much material available to spend your time with. So I used that time in between, you know, to probably read occasionally, make a phone call, do my academic work. So I use that time in between to, or that's the time you connect with my table teaching. What keeps me very busy. It keeps me engaged. It keeps my students with me. I do a lot of table teaching, ma'am. So once the case is over, that's the time. Now I just call the postgraduates from the various theaters. I sit on one side and we discuss anything that is related to that patient, from how you confirm an endotracheal tube position to management of cirrhosis and everything in between. That's the time I do it. So I think it makes time also go past. You stay in the theater with your eyes on the monitor, and the children also don't go anywhere. They will stay with you and get focused on the patient, and that's the time I use for teaching.
Okay. Then one more question, what I was asking, I forgot actually. There. Yeah, in the gym, as you are a fond of gym,
Yes, ma'am.
Being a doctor, whether you teach to the gym trainer how he should teach you, or you are 100% listening to him
So
or her.
good question. I think the undercut doctor comes out when you see people doing wrong things. You know that the instructor in front of you is knows not even 10% of what he can't even pronounce the name of the muscles properly. But I have realized that I don't offer advice now. This has only come in hindsight. I don't offer advice now unless somebody asks me, or somebody sees somebody doing something so wrong that it's going to injure them or harm them. Then I go intervene. But otherwise, I have a group of friends, yes, but unless I don't kind of go poke my head into everybody's exercise saying, I know I'm a doctor and you are an idiot and you don't know what
No. Regarding your personal gym trainer, I'm
no,
asking.
personal gym trainers, ma'am, I do my own exercise now because now it's been so many years that I've already learned the basics. And now I know better than the trainer. So now I do my own exercises. I may or may not listen to them. I sometimes ask them for advice if I want something, some new information or some new exercise or something. But otherwise, I do my own exercises now.
Yes. Nice, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Giri, you have any questions for Dr. Anju? Today was just a freewheeling chat. No
I know.
lecture. So feel free, Giri, to ask any question you want.
No, one small question. Of course, there's such a wonderful program. I joined a bit later, but Madam Sari changes on my Mac screen from blue to purple. I don't know, something wrong with the connection. Are you wearing a blue sari or a purple? Or
No, sir, I'm wearing an indigo blue. It's a beautiful, if you can see, indigo blue sari. It's a Banarsi sari
Okay, I can see
with
that,
real
yeah.
zari. It's a very beautiful piece from the looms of Banaras, and it's deep blue, indigo blue in color, sir.
Okay.
How
Okay,
many
so I think,
Kanjivarams do you have? Kanjivaram silks.
Sir, maybe more than 100.
With the- Really? Yeah. I mean, the color choice.
It also includes my trousseau collection from that time onwards, like my my wedding sarees and thereafter must be close to 100. Kanjivarams itself must be close to 100.
Wonderful. Great.
So actually, I wanted Dr. Ranju to be there for the session we
The
did on
sari session.
sari, but
Yes,
she
ma'am,
was traveling
absolutely.
that time. That's why. So
We'll have a separate session on, I know we can have a series on saris of India or something like that.
Yeah.
in fact,
I'll
Radhakrishna
be
wants to
interested.
write Radhakrishna wants to actually, given a choice, he'll write a book on that also, or do a series on that maybe.
So let's do a book on that. I'd very happily, that's something which is very, very close to my heart. And I am a very strong proponent of saris. And let's do that. It will be a beautiful collaboration.
Certainly, ma'am. We'll work on it. We'll get the other sari specialists in as well.
Right, sir.
Vidya.
So it's despite it being the holiday season and people in between Christmas and New Year, and we've had so many people who have logged in and stayed logged in. So thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, Dr. Anju, for making time in your busy schedule. And she was not very happy that it was not a pre-formatted session, but I am sure now that in hindsight you actually enjoyed it more because you didn't know what was going to be asked.
As somebody said, Vidya, her demeanor, her joy is infectious. I feel so happy talking to her. Like, I mean, not even once she frowned, not even, I think that's a very great asset. I hope all anesthesiologists are like that.
So letting me lose on the internet, letting me lose on a forum without actually knowing what I'm going to say is actually a very dangerous thing to do. You're very brave. I'm known to speak my mind. I really don't mince my words. But I'm glad it went well.
I mean, everyone on the chat box is basically feels that you have spread some joy today. So, being the festive season, what more can we want to do. So thank you so much, Dr. Anju, for sparing your time, and thank you everybody who logged in and for a very interactive session. We'll meet again next week with another session of Marvelous Medicine. Till then, take care and stay safe. Good night.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much
Thank
for
you so
having me. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.